more folks trickle in here. But first of all, it's my great honor to introduce you to Dane Sanders. So I met Dane through one of our facilitators, Brandon Clift. Brandon runs a podcast and had Dane on as a podcast guest a couple years back, maybe. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, we have to have Dane in here. He has immense wisdom to share, and he's a storyteller. He's a brand guy. He's a people leader." Yeah, when Dane and I connected, I instantly loved his energy and his wisdom, and so I'm so thrilled to introduce you to Dane. He's, I guess, head of employee development at his current company, but he's been an entrepreneur. I think you might have your own podcast. You are a keynote speaker. You're a brand and storyteller. You're all the things. So you're actually who I aspire to be one day, Dane, and maybe all of us. So I'm going to turn it over to you to share a little bit about your story and about yourself, and then excited about what you have to share with us today around employee culture and development.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And I want to honor everyone's time. I recognize it's a lot to find your way here and to give up your time. And I don't take that lightly. So first of all, I just really appreciate everyone who's taken the time to do that. You have to organize your lives, and I'm guessing very complex lives, in such a way to be here. So first, want to acknowledge that. Second, I also want to acknowledge that just because you have an eclectic background doesn't mean um, much apart from you might be confused. And that might be what Ha was talking about when she was talking about me. So I'm hoping that today's conversation comes together in a way that's very meaningful for you and your work, and you can take something from this. Um, I do want to give you a little bit of context for how I'm in the position that I'm in, and I don't totally know if I was to go back in time and go, oh, here's the recipe to get from A to B, I would not have prescribed the path that I took. I'll just frame it that way. But I do have a very eclectic background where I started as an academic. I was teaching at a liberal arts college up in Santa Barbara, California, and I was teaching leadership and character development. My background in grad school was around Aristotelian virtue ethics, very heady stuff. It's really just fancy words for is there such a thing as a good life? How would you become a good person? How would you organize society in such a way that more good people would come out of it? That sort of thing. And I loved it. I loved the work. It was fantastic. And I had come from a space where my undergrad work was in marketing, and I had come to the conclusion that um, marketing was basically an exercise in manipulating people to buy things they don't want or need. And I felt really gross about it. And that's why I ran in the direction of philosophy. Now, good news, I'm a marketer now, and I actually love it. I think there's tremendous redemption in this work. And thankfully, I was rescued thanks to some incredible voices, very personal voices in my world. One that I know all of you know, Seth Godin, played a very significant role in my life in helping me reframe what marketing could be. And really he's helped, I credit him in many ways for resetting my trajectory. Another person that's had a significant influence is a guy named Donald Miller, who I had a chance to do a lot of corporate training through his story brand framework and helping organizations craft a narrative around their business. And all that led to a lot of coaching and consulting work. And I was coaching a gentleman by the name of Taylor Holiday, who runs a digital agency in Orange County called Common Thread Collective. It's been around at this point, call it a decade, and I've been working with him, he and his team for call it 4 years or so. And through that process, they had seen tremendous success. I want to set the table for this moment that we're in, though, because coming out of COVID, imagine direct consumer e-commerce businesses selling things to people at home who are online full time. You could imagine, if you don't know that space, it was very productive. You probably do know you spent a lot of money between 20 and 22 online, way more than you had ever spent before that time online. And that was around the season, you might remember, where ads were getting ridiculously effective. It's like you could think about an idea and all of a sudden new ads were coming in your stream that seemed relevant to the things that you were thinking about. And you're like, how is this possible? What's going on? Well, there's a lot of interesting tech going on in the background, but a lot of it was just critical mass of people buying things online. But then a number of macroeconomic dynamics happened somewhere around the middle of 2022. If you were a brand selling something online, you had this incredible uh, party that was revenue, and you made a lot of money up until that moment. But then all of a sudden, things like iPhone 14 happened, where privacy shifted what was possible for agencies and brands to have access to, and kind of who was doing what where. That was a massive disruptor. And also, all the free money went away in the economy. All the government funded home life went away. And these kind of huge dynamics contributed to a lot of pain and suffering for brands that had bloated and had a really big payroll, and agencies were in a similar place. So at Common Thread Collective, in between quarters 3 and quarter 4 of 2022, they went from about 180 employees to just over 40 employees. And I'll show you the numbers near the end of this presentation, but their revenue and EBITDA dropped precipitously. And the average tenure of the employees at the organization was 6 months. So it was a brutal season where employees were jumping around going like, oh, I'll get a ten or $20,000 pay raise and a fancy title just to jump ship and go someplace else. And uh, uh, the longer tail of what was happening out of COVID around D2C e-commerce was shifting. So let me just pause for a second. Does that context make sense? Is there anything I can clarify before we get into today's conversation? Does the setting make sense?
I think it's not a unique story, Dane, because I mean, a lot of us here are in tech and,
You
all
lived
of
through
the
it,
companies, they are, yeah,
100%.
they're bloated. And then all of a sudden the rules of the game shifted.
Yes. So it was in that context where the CEO, Taylor, he asked me to do a retreat with some key employees, desperate to how can we keep these people here? How can we get greater commitment? How can we get greater buy-in? And it was a select group of the remnant that were there. And we had some very successful um, retreats where ultimately people committed to voluntarily raise their hand and say, I'd like to stay here for 3 years. I'd like to go all in and make this thing really, really special. And Taylor pulled me aside at the end of the retreats and he said, I have good news and bad news. Bad news is you're fired as our consultant. Good news is you're hired as our VP of Employee Development and Performance. And we'd like you to come on and do this thing, this ideology that you've developed and have honed. And I'll say just one more comment about that in a second. And we'd like you to have that influence our whole community, our whole team. So I said, okay, so what you're saying is you'd like to change how people relate with their work. Is that right? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, great. Well, I only know one way to do that. So now I need to tell you one more quick story that connects, and then we'll pull it all together in the presentation. And here it is. On the side, I run a community of people, consumers, call them, called Men and Women of Discomfort. This is how I met Brandon. He had me on the podcast to talk about this. But Men and Women of Discomfort are people that actually raise their hand and say, I volunteer to get uncomfortable for 90 days. And more specifically, they make one choice to participate, and the rest of the next 90 days, they make no more choices. We take over all of the cognitive load and tell them how many hours of sleep they're to get, how much water they drink in a day, how many days a week they work out, what they eat, what they don't eat, what they drink, what they don't drink, when that happens. And we actually started rolling in additional habits like getting into cold water and holding your breath and doing anonymous good deeds and reading books that you would never want to read and having conversations with people that are very different than you for the sake of empathy and understanding, and on and on and on. And it might sound like from the outside looking in that we were creating a wellness program, but we were not. We were actually surveying people's lives and trying to find the places of discomfort that they were willing to raise their hand for and say, I'm going to choose to do things with agency and see if I can see change happen. And change, friends, happened in this community. We started with just three of us, me and a friend who ran it, and one client. And over the course of 5 years, have now had hundreds and hundreds of people come through. And we basically exist to make their lives uncomfortable. Now, the good news is um, for you all. Our tagline is, it's probably not for you. I'm not here to sell anyone on Men and Women of Discomfort, but I am here to share what we learned in that context, applied directly to our work at Common Thread Collective, and the results were extraordinary. So let me talk through that now. Came down to this question of, if we were going to create a high performance team, a people business, we were not actually interested in creating a high performance team. We're not interested in doing anything to change the individual. Instead, our interest was to change the environment that individual was in. So the assertion I was making was, the fastest way to build a high performance team is to create a high performance culture, and then make that culture so attractive to high performers that they would say, oh my gosh, I can't leave. And for those who were unattracted, they would run out the back door as quickly as possible. So that's the broad stroke idea. And the way this played out was a couple ways. First, it started off with the diff department, which was basically the name of the department that I now run. The leader of that department, who is a remarkable person, made the following comment to Taylor Holiday in circa 2022, as they were voluntarily leaving the company. When Taylor was saying we need to ask more of our people, this leader said, it's not possible to get employees in our industry to commit at that level. And I don't fault this leader for making this assertion. This is a common belief that's held, that will create burnout. We will take people to standards that are too high. We'll create an egomaniac leader that everyone feels like they're just a cog in their wheel. And we're going to over-index on challenge and under-index on support, and it'll be this kind of awful environment to work in. So this was this come from that this individual shared, and then I get hired. So my lead in was a simple kind of framing around ideas that Edward Deming came up with, which is simply, your system is perfectly designed to give you the results you're getting. This is not a problem that we're in right now. This is a system that we're in right now. And the system is yielding exactly what the system was designed to yield, including the macroeconomic dynamics, including the exact team that we have here, and including the culture that we're living in. So if we want a different result, it's not to try to fix anything. It's to design something, to design a context and a culture that people would find inviting if they were particularly prone to performance. The problem we were up against was this. We had spent years desperate to get employees in seats, and we were scaling very, very quickly. This is, again, a well-told story. And we were kind of building, or the organization before I came on as a staff, but I was a consultant in it. I was complicit here. We were creating an employee-centric focus. There was a real lack of accountability to the customer, and there was an exclusive emphasis on, when you come to motivation, on saying to an employee, look, we'll pay you more, we'll give you a better title, we'll provide free lunches, we'll give you foosball, whatever you need to do to be happy, we'll be happy, which was great in the short term, but of course resulted in an entitled culture on behalf of the folks involved. And this was a problem, and I would frame it as, we were employee centric in a way that was not helpful. And this is also where I think Sarah, and is it Latha or Latha? I want to make sure I get that correct.
It's Lata. Yeah.
Latha, your comments about um, working back from the customer are going to be very relevant here. And also the comment from Nancy about automation around in an incremental way, I think is also really relevant here. So we went from an employee-centric culture to a customer-centric culture. And I should say, in going to this customer-centric solution, it wasn't going to happen just because we asserted the idea. If you break down what this idea means, it comes down to the little micro areas within an organization: guidelines, procedures, standards, reviews, updates, practices, accountability, performance metrics, feedback mechanisms, and on that's listed here, training programs, continuous improvement, trying to enhance this organizational performance. This is all of the tasks that are required if you try to take a team that you have and make them high performers. And we didn't do any of this. We didn't do any of it. This would be far too, it would be a worthy project, I suppose, but not one that if you have a limited time horizon that is reasonable to accomplish, because we needed to turn this very quickly. So instead, we just came up with a couple key kind of first principles. First, no compression, no growth. Our people will not grow if we don't create compression that they voluntarily participate in. And to set them up to do that, we decided that we were going to get crystal clear on a couple things and declare out loud, we're reinventing our culture, and we're going to start with the customer. So we exist to build the next generation of legendary brands and the people who will lead them. Everything we do is to serve that mission. The values are very accessible. Number one, we are standard setters, not standard meters. We don't meet spec. If you work here, you exceed spec and you want to. Two, we're driven to increase customer value, meaning that's the only reason we exist. And three, we create an environment where excellent people not only want to do excellent work themselves, but their colleagues want to do that too. And then this third bit, our ethos, how we go about doing that work, was a commitment to take 100% responsibility for the results we're getting. This is a systems-oriented thing. It's not that there's a problem anywhere. It's the system is built to yield what we're getting. So with this as a framework, we got into the work. And we started with motivation. And motivation, there's a lot of really good research on this. If you haven't ever done a perplexity search on self-determination theory, I would strongly encourage you to do that. But it contrasts extrinsic drivers with intrinsic drivers of motivation. It turns out extrinsic drivers are very effective for short-term motivation. These are things like status, money, beauty, that's affirmed, that sort of thing. These are all, when these things are tapped, you get people to get very motivated. I have 4 adulting children. The most exciting moment they had relative to their college experiences was the day they got accepted to the college. And then from then on, it went from I got in to, oh yeah, and they're skipping classes and I have a paper due tomorrow morning and I'm out doing whatever I'm doing. And like the short-term motivator waned in its efficacy, and we needed something else. And it turns out that long-term motivators are all intrinsic. They're all internal, and they're not very complicated. There's 3 of them. If you get, if you have agency, meaning you can raise your hand to go do, you can see yourself as someone that you're not right now, and you have a means by which you can raise your hand and become that kind of person, that's an intrinsic driver. The second would be mastery. Like if I can get better at a thing, even incrementally every single day, that has high intrinsic value and motivation. Third, if I feel like I'm belonging to something that's transcendent, that's bigger than me, this is what I want to move toward. This is motivating. And it turns out these are all things we learned at Men and Women of Discomfort. But now we are inviting our culture to wrap our whole existence around it. Again, this is optimizing for long-term motivation and satisfaction at work. We called it ABC, so it's agency, belonging, and competence. It actually is the proper order is agency, competence, and belonging, but that doesn't make for a memorable acronym. So we went with ABC this way. And then we created a tool by which we could actually measure whether or not our environment was being experienced around these 3 things. So every quarter we survey the team and we say, how are we doing? And in Q1, 2023, we established the collective index and we're actually measuring for self-determination. Did people experience agency, competence, and belonging, and at what level? Establish a baseline and then measure it every quarter since. In addition to that, our hiring process has changed. We decided in advance who are the people that will thrive in these environments. And we will say directly, like, so you can imagine, we just came off of, in 2022, not only this tanking of revenue, we also went through 3 rounds of layoffs. And in those rounds of layoffs, we learned a lot of painful lessons, and that all showed up on Glassdoor when people look us up and say, where do you want to go work? And again, these are pain points that I know all of you, many of you have experienced. You know what I'm describing. And we actually saw that as an opportunity to create an asset, to create a narrative around what was happening, and put it in an honest way that wasn't just spin, but was true. So we went to our existing employee base, forget hiring for a second, and we said basically this. We said, look, we're changing our culture, and some of you are here and you're going to love it. And some of you are here and you're going to hate it. And those of you who hate it, you're going to want to leave and you're going to want to get mad at us, and we deserve it. We're 100% responsible for this. We created this system and we had a deal with you that our job was to make you happy at work. And we don't want that deal anymore. That deal will mean we are not viable as an organization. It means everyone loses their job, so we can't do it. So we're switching course. And if you want to stick around, and we get it if you don't, it's probably not for you. Um, we're going to go in this direction. We're going to be standard setters. We're going to be all about the customer. And we're going to move in a direction that creates, like, get back to the values. We are creating an environment where the best of the best want to thrive. So we did that. And then with every new hire, we did the same thing. And we had a great narrative to say, this is why the Glassdoor reviews don't look so great, because we're becoming someone new. And this isn't for everybody. And we get why. And these people that left, we get why they left, because a lot of them left in Q1 2023. And this wasn't because they were forced to leave. This is the folks who were like, this does not sound attractive to me. Second, we decided that we're going to call up or out exclusively. The way it works here is you are moving towards the hard thing, so that if that looks attractive to you, we create a lot of incentive. One of the things that's happened since early 2023 is our average pay has gone extraordinarily up because the caliber of the people, they keep hitting milestones that create so much disproportionate value for our customers. We actually can pay them more because we're making more money from our customers, which you'll see in a second. Or if this isn't for you, let's set you up to win. Let's get you a place to go work that actually is a better fit for what you're looking to achieve, but it probably won't be here, and we'll help you get there. We also established some ideas like the rule of 10. The rule of 10, this is a simple one, and I'll stop sharing screen just for a second so you can see my face and hear me talk about it. I want you to imagine any group of 10 people in your actual world, and I want you to picture 2 of them of the 10, 5 of them of the 10, and 3 of them of the 10. So we're going to break them up into chunks: 2s, 3s, and 5s. Everybody clear so far? Some nod, some thumbs up, some I'm looking at your faces. Are we clear? 2s, 3s, and 5s out of 10. Everybody okay? I think your screens are frozen. I can't see anyone's heads moving.
Are you saying that we have to question? Sorry,
Yes,
jumping in. Just thinking about twos, so the group of 10 into twos, and the group of 10 into threes, and group of 10 into fives, correct?
correct. So you have 10 people in any group. 2 of them are of 2 of the 10, 5 of the 10, 3 of the 10. And this is emblematic of any group of 100 or 1,000 or whatever you're dealing with. But what you can count on in what we call our rule of 10, and I borrowed this from a mentor of mine, a guy named Dan Tacchini, but the idea was simply what you can count on in any group of 10 is 2 of those 10 are standard setters. 2 of those 10 are like, these are the kids that when they were in college and they had a group project, they did the group project. Probably most of you on this call were the 2s. But in addition to the 2s, on every group of 10, there are 3s. And the 3s are the what have you done for me lately? How can you create more work-life balance for me at work? My feet are firmly in the mud because status quo is what I'm seeking. And those are the 3s. But of course, that begs the question, who are the 5s? And the 5s are the ones who are on the fence. And the 5s are the one who are looking to the community, to the culture, to say, what are you rewarding in this culture? And I want to know, do you want me to be incentivized to be a 2, or do you want to incentivize me to be a 3? Because I'm on the fence. So we knew up front, any group of 10, we have 2s, 3s, and 5s. And we needed to actually assess, and we started asking the managers to assess week by week, what do you think your team is? Who on your team is a 2? Who on your team is a 5? Who on your team is a 3? At least this week. And these numbers they're not static, they're dynamic. You know, people might have a bad week where they look like they're more on the offense. Is it a state or a trait, is how I've heard it described. And we want to make sure that over time, as we track data, we can have a sense of how they're showing up. Do they show up as a 2? Do they show up as a 5? Or do they show up as a 3? And I think right now, you all can think of people on your teams that you right away, when I described the 2, the 3, or the 5, you thought of people. Because this is such a common human dynamic. And our interest was, this was where it gets very interesting to me, is our interest was not to convert any 3s at all. No energy spent on the threes. Spend all of your energy edifying the twos to enroll the fives and ignore the threes. Trust that the threes will course correct on their own. And there's no change work here. I'm not making something different out of a person. I'm inviting people to raise their hand with agency, to want to get better at their job every day, and to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. So we started playing with this idea of the rule of 10. And then we went further. We started asking questions like, how are people's energy levels impacting their work? We actually started this thing called the drama tax, where every week managers would look at every person and ask the question, who's costing you a lot of drama tax, a lot of energy? And let's start actually tracking that. And at first it was just too much energy, you might want to call drama tax, but where there was also another kind of energy, which was not enough energy. And what we wanted was this Goldilocks method of assessing interpersonal energy. Was there a sense of like too much or too little? We wanted just right. And how could we begin to record that? And then we actually took a business or a sports metaphor of the depth chart. And we said, how can we start in jobs where there's multiple people doing the same role? How can we begin to say, in the same way that a high school football team in Texas might say who your quarterback 1 is and your quarterback 2 is and your quarterback 3 is on a depth chart? We could do a depth chart for our own people and increasingly be transparent about it. So everyone knew where they stood relative to their role, relative to the organization. And this becomes especially interesting if you plot who is media buyer 1 versus media buyer 5, and you know how much media buyer 1 is being paid and how much media buyer 5 is being paid. Because if 5 is being paid less, but is in the one spot, that's a high value customer or high value employee. And if I'm in the one spot with pay, but in the fifth spot with performance and how I'm showing up, well, that's problematic. I'm in a risky position. Now, we didn't start by just telling everybody where they all stood. We recognized the tool was in development and we didn't want to create unnecessary upset in the organization, but we started getting honest with ourselves about how we actually viewed people relative to a depth chart. Then we started aligning incentives in addition to things like PIPs and ECRs and verbal warnings. We created positive incentives for growth. We call it, instead of a personal improvement plan like a PIP, we created a voluntary improvement plan called a VIP. We introduced level up coaching and creating agreements within the organization to increase what was aligned and what we could get agreement on as we got better as an organization. And then finally, we started measuring this really, really squishy metric called Are You Wholehearted? A subjective metric to estimate impact and maximize learning on whether or not we thought people were all in their role. So we took all these ideas and we built a tool we call the Key Employee Index. And we asked managers to keep a weekly personal pulse so that we could take immediate action with any employee. And it looks like this. Every week in Asana, managers fill out things like, are they a 2, a 5, or a 3? Are they a wholehearted on the fence or a detractor? Are they a flight risk? What's their energy quotient like? Are there any current interventions going on right now? Is there any backup plan? Are we concerned that something is on? Do we need to have an honest conversation and make an agreement about how our relationship is going? What's their personality profile? Are there any notes that could go on? When did they start? And we started tracking this week to week and improving the tool over time. And we started learning some things. Like you can see how over the course of time, our detractors started decreasing. Our rule of 10 started shifting. The energy adjusted, the drama tax was going down just because we were measuring it and paying attention. And we went further. This is actually a case study of an individual employee who will go nameless. And if you're wondering where this individual, it's a gentleman, he's in this 5.87, 7.60, 4.87. So this was his head-to-head score. So this was his manager saying, if you had to go head-to-head, person 1 versus person 2, 1 versus 3, 1 versus 4, and then have everybody go head-to-head, and you had to cut somebody, who would win in a fight? Who would you keep? So head-to-head, if person 1 went against person 2 and person 1 won, this person would get 3 points. And the person who didn't win would get 0. If they were a tie, they'd both get 1 point. We added that all up, did some math, and we got a score out of 10 for their head-to-head score. So this person was lowest on the head-to-head score, and their forward progress is somewhere in the middle. This is their kind of quarterly review on how they were doing. So that was kind of interesting data. These are the one map, growth map, and if on concept log was just simply behavioral metrics that we know this role. If you're a paid social buyer, you will succeed if these three things are always happening. And this is how often those things were happening, just objective metrics, and that's it. And then finally, we tracked monthly billable capacity. So we actually know incrementally what the contribution of any employee is relative to the money they bring in from our customers. And we started tracking that as well. And where we landed on for this individual was some really fascinating data. We started to be able to tell over time. So if you can track Q4 2023 through Q4 2024, this individual showed a really consistent trend line where the team average was, as the red line shows, but the blue line was consistently this individual would surge in Q4, think Black Friday, Cyber Monday, end of year push. But then he would drop off precipitously right after the new year. So this is probably the best chart where you can see it, where again, coming out of Q4, he's above everyone. The red is the team average, the blue is this individual, and then the yellow is our standard setter. And this individual would do great in Q4 and then get really inconsistent all the way through to Q3 and then surge again in Q4. And he was always confused why he wasn't being elevated as a person. So we got to have very kind of material conversations around consistency, but that we can predict now that he is motivated in such a way that he's not owning his quarters 1, 2, and 3, and instead is riding the extrinsic drivers that Q4 introduced and was winning as a result, but only in Q4. So our feedback was consistency is your only hope to prove to us you actually want to be a part of this environment. And it might not be for you. We totally get it. We love you. We think you're a fantastic human, but we don't want you to continue to be in an environment where you're not thriving as an individual. And this is who we are, and we're unapologetic about it. The results were pretty amazing. Turnover and attrition dropped radically. We had one key employee, someone designated as a 2 or even a 5, who left in the 2 years since we started this, in 2023 through now in 2025. Also, the average age went from less than 6 months to more than 4 years. Ultimately, when you compare 23 against 24, our key employee retention in that window, after that one person left, we had a 2-year run where no one left. So we had 100% retention of key employees. Our key business retention was 92.5%. And non-key departed employees was almost 10%, but those are the 10 that we actually wanted them to leave. We didn't need Jack Welch to get us to fire people. It was very organic. But this is where it gets very interesting, and this is where I'm going to pause in a second. We're going to start the conversation, and I'm happy to pull up these slides later. I want you to notice what happened as a correlation over that time relative to revenue. So revenue in Q2 2022 was around $5.4 million or $5.7 million. But the profit on that plot point on Q2 2022 was $286,000 roughly. And you can see how profit or EBITDA kind of was very kind of up and down, even while our revenue numbers were dropping. So flat profit as revenue's dropping, and we're concerned. But what we're really interested in is how could we both increase revenue and explode in our profitability? And that's exactly what happened over the course of this window of time. So a little bit of pain around 2023, and then nothing but up and to the right from really Q2 of 2023 through 2024. And you'll see this is a little over $2 million in revenue on a little over $6.5 million. A little over $2 million in profit on a little over $6.5 million in revenue coming out of last year. But we're projected now to get $30 million in revenue in 2025 with $9 million in EBITDA. So everything hinged on this plot point between 22 and 23, where revenue went up, EBITDA went down for a second, and then it was straight up into the right from there. So I'm going to pause there. It's a lot of interesting, I think, case study information that I think is highly applicable. The last anecdote I'll share is I had a chance to, we had a chance to, we work with a number of fantastic brands. Our kind of ideal customer profile is brands in the kind of 10 to $100 million range in annual recurring revenue. And we brought a bunch of them, a lot of brands that you all would know, came to our headquarters, and we had a great time talking about e-commerce. And I did a little throwaway breakout session on culture, and I shared much of what I shared with you. And to our great shock, everyone showed up to my talk. In fact, we had to do it twice just to make sure that everyone had a chance, because I was in such a tiny little room. We had to go do it again. And I was affirmed and flattered, but really I was curious, like, I don't think it was about me that people were interested in this topic. It was because it was far more pervasive an issue of how do you deal with the people problem? And what I want to suggest, and if there's one high level summary I would say, is this: don't deal with the people problem. Deal with the higher order, further upstream opportunity, which is making the disciplined set of choices of the environment that you're creating, and making that environment so hospitable for winners that they are grabbing their friends and bringing them in. And for folks that they're not losers, that was the wrong choice when I said that. High performers is the better choice, because there's really good people who just don't want to live in that environment. And there's others that thrive in it. In fact, we had some employees who came to us, high performers, who said, if you hadn't changed the culture, I was leaving, because I only want to work with people that are going to help me get better. And we saved losing them as a result. So let me pause there and open the conversation and see if we can't get into something that could be material for you and your organization.
And feel free to go off mute too, if you have specific questions. But Dane,
Hey,
I've never
Debbie.
seen, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ha.
I was just gonna say, so when I was the COO of my last startup, I had HR under me, and we measured employee NPS essentially. But I've never been in an organization that's measuring like what you measured, Dane. So I mean, wow, so impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you need to go back into the consulting world to like teach all of these other organizations how to not just
I love my
elevate,
job so much.
yeah, elevate the culture, but then also like measure it, right? Like
Yeah.
measure and not just measure like customer satisfaction, but impact on the bottom line as well. So
Yeah, it's not a causation relationship, to be fair. It's just correlation. But I do think
yeah.
there's a lot to be learned, especially because even with I heard some comments at the beginning of this around AI. It's our vision of AI is more like electricity than anything else. And it's ultimately everyone's going to become, at least performers are going to be Iron Men. They're going to, meaning not the runners and bikers and swimmers, but the people who put on the suit, and they have disproportionate superpowers as a result, kind of like Syndrome in that Incredibles movie back in the day. And it's because they're going to be very astute at learning how to get this electricity to work for them in a way that's disproportionate to their colleagues. But they have to be the kinds of people who choose the disciplined world. Right now, it's a very disorienting time. People are not sure, how do I go up? No, there's no like obvious way to learn how to use AI relative to your job, apart from individuals really doing some radical experimenting. How do I actually leverage these tools and a means to make the button pressing, the robotic stuff done by robots more effectively, so I can stand on the shoulders of that and do the more human work? And we just needed a tool to measure the human work. And that's what we've started building.
Great. Thank you. Teresa.
Sorry, I'm having internet connections, so just letting you know ahead of time if I
Thank you.
slow down or drop off. My question, it's probably a little bit more tactical, Dane, but so if you're expecting managers to go through that evaluation process with their team members, themselves, whatever level they're at,
Yep.
are not equipped to be the right people to be evaluating their problem. Like maybe there's an incompetent leader that's maybe the toxic person that the team is experiencing? Like, how do you
Mm.
assess that? Because I always
Yeah,
wonder, like,
I love that question. Thank you.
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, how do you guys figure out that that organization has the right, like, quality of leaders in place to do the evaluation?
So we're in this exact situation this morning. One of the reasons why I was doing last minute slide making is because I was in a meeting with one of our directors. So we have managers, directors, VPs, and our team size right now is around 70-ish or so people. Um, and we have an IC or an individual contributor who seemingly is just um, radically missing the mark, kind of working to rule, and a three. Let's call her a three. And her boss, uh, my assessment, doesn't want her here, wants her gone, is angry about it, is pissed that she's even taking, like, she's on a glorified personal improvement plan that is the IC, but this manager doesn't even want to walk her through the drill. She just wants to document and get her out the door. You know what I'm describing? Like, you've seen that dynamic before. And we have two opportunities. It's not two problems. The system we've designed is exists perfectly to create an environment where these two folks are working at our organization. And our interest isn't to change either of them, but to reinforce our values. So the conversation I was in this morning around with the manager, where we asked to fill these things out every week, and has been filling it out on this individual for some time. We're filling one out on her too. But it's a different set of objective metrics around what a manager plus uh, what yields to success. Does she take 100% responsibility? Does she run everything through the lens of what's going to serve the customer? Does she creatively deploy enough support in order to have enough rapport with an employee to challenge them beyond what feels like a stretch? And if not, why not? Um, and we're discovering a lot of great things. And at the end of the day, in this instance, um, you could say we have two problems, but we actually have a reveal of a problem in our system that when we shore this up, we can have, based on history, we can have some confidence that we'll be able to get it sorted. But it's not easy. It requires a tremendous amount of emotional labor, really sifting through, like, okay, assessing what is going on for the individual because they're failing, what's going on for the manager because they're failing. And the only path forward is, because we're not going to let this IC go for the next at least 2 weeks, is to actually go wholehearted towards these efforts for these next 2 weeks. And by the way, manager, we're looking at you as just as much as we're looking at this failing IC. So what are you two doing to solve your problem? And we're watching with bated breath and eager to help however we can. Because you know what else? I'm responsible for that dynamic. I built this whole system. So I'm on the hook. I have a vested interest in the success of both the employee and the manager, but ultimately the customer. Because if we fail here, the customer fails too. These are the conversations we live and breathe in. And we're weirdos. We love these conversations. These are actually the conversations we get to go have. We don't have to go have. Because when we sort these things out, we create an environment where the best people want to come to work. So give me some honest feedback, Teresa. What are you hearing? Does this resonate in any way that's meaningful for you? What's helpful, not helpful?
No, I love it because it's two ways. It's not just a group of people looking downward and
That's right.
evaluating. You know, you have to be evaluating down and up and across. And I think sometimes, like one person or a group of people is looked and evaluated one way, and it just seems really unfair because I've been in both situations, like
Me
where
too.
I've seen it, and so you have to. So I love that. I was curious also, when you work with clients, like, you know, do you do a readiness assessment to figure out if a certain company or an organization is in the right place for you to enter? Because sometimes, like, just off the bat, they're just not the right client for the work you guys are doing or you're doing.
Yeah, that's right. It's the same exercise we do with employees. We have two customers. Our customers are our customers and our customers are our employees. And it's the same set of exercises. So what's unique about our unique value proposition in the marketplace as a agency, as a digital marketing agency, is we actually don't start with marketing. We start with finance. So we get into the P&Ls of our businesses and try to figure out where are the opportunities, is it a healthy business? Is it going to have a chance? I mean, that's the dark secret of good marketing is great marketers pick winners that are going to win with or without your marketing. And we want to actually get after the ones that are winners. Now, that said, we have work to do to scale that, maximize our opportunity, all that sort of thing. But we want to get in and under the hood. And it's funny, when I did that little talk I mentioned, um, two of our clients asked my CEO if they could hire me to come into their company and create a KEI for their organization. And what's so funny, the dynamic is the reason my Taylor said yes, and I've done it, and it's really fun. One of them in particular um, is this outfit out of Austin. Not only now I'm on the inside working with real humans within the brand, so I have all this intel that I get to bring back to our organization. Like, oh, they're the actual point of contact you want to talk to, and they're the influencer that's really going on. So it's like I'm a spy, like I'm going in, and a good one. Like they know I'm spying. It's okay. But more critically, we've just installed a culture in their organization that mirrors our culture. So how do you think the agency now works with their internal team? Swimmingly. And I think we've just locked in the retention with this customer for another 2 years. So it's in a sense, it's a distraction of our work for me to go and do this kind of stuff. But in another sense, it's like I'm an account executive going in and kind of encouraging retention. It's crazy. So long-winded way to say, yes, we assess on the front end, but we don't stop there. There's a lot of great opportunity to keep fortifying who we are as a culture with the clients we get to work with.
Awesome. I'm gonna just quickly, I know Letha has a question, but I'm gonna just quickly throw up the QR code. So for the folks, we're gonna still take questions, but if you're still with us, and I hope you are, I know Dane and his work highly values the feedback. We do too.
Totally.
So it would be great to get out your phone and point it to the QR code. And then it takes 1 minute to fill out the feedback, and we share it with Dane. So please do that. Letha, I saw you that you came on camera. Did you have a specific question?
I did to what Dane was talking about. One often in the kind of this culture change and what you're proposing, even when you work with the company in Austin, the buy-in has to be at the highest level for
Yes.
it to be fully. Have you seen situations where it's worked in there is a leader, organization leader within that company who wants to implement the practices, but his stakeholders, his peer stakeholders are not bought in yet. And does it still work in those scenarios?
Yeah, well, what's required is some real conversation where like this is great. I haven't read this book, but it's a sales book that's on the shelves somewhere right now called Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. And I love the title. I don't even know the content of the book. But I quote that title all the time, where I basically walk in. And what's interesting is there's something about this narrative that I'm a little surprised by that I feel like I've stumbled into. But there's something about this narrative that has a deep resonance with most founders and CEOs. They have this sense of like, I've been dying to get my people to care about this thing as much as I do. But what's unfair about that care is the founders and CEOs are often they have equity. They're on the cap table. Like it's not fair. They actually are owners. Whereas in most, unless it's an employee-owned organization, which by the way we happen to be, which is kind of nice, but it's almost inappropriate to say I want our employees to act like an owner when they're not really owners. But this is not actually asking them to act like an owner of the company. It's asking them to be an owner of themselves, to take responsibility for their own input, their own results they're getting, to see themselves as a system, not something that has a problem. And for whatever reason, that has had disproportionate resonance, and I think opens more doors than closes. We have had people like, let's say, middle management in an organization who hear about what we're doing and they're asking and they're like, I want to get more into it. And we're really direct to say, to the degree that you can get us into a conversation with your leadership, at least executive team, if not your founder, it's probably not relevant. You're going to actually beat your head against the wall. But I think if you can organize yourself in such a way where that is an audience that actually is interested and the timing is right, it could be very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question.
Amy, did you have a question?
No, I didn't. I just like to keep my camera on, but this is
Yeah, yeah.
really
Okay,
interesting and
great.
helpful. Yeah, no
Yeah,
immediate question, but I was taking a few notes here. This was really, really insightful. So thank you.
Amy, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what is it about today? And I'm not fishing for compliments, I promise you. It's for relevant to you and your organization and what you're doing. What is it?
Yeah.
What's one thing that you get a sense from what we've talked about that you could imagine getting like leveraging somehow? Or
Leveraging. I think for me, I like the framing of flipping it, though, flipping it from creating a culture where you're focusing on kind of like the benefits and some of the things. Currently an employee, but I was at a company for 12 years, and a lot of the issues that you described are issues that I've encountered there. But the rule of 10 and just kind of flipping it. So you're creating a culture and environment where you're superstars. So I think I use the phrase the superstars for those like excelling employees, which I think from the rule of 10 would have been those two. Just
That's
kind of
right.
flipping a culture so you really create and measure a culture where those employees want to stay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Well,
and measuring it. I think measuring it and the Asana thing, that was kind of a key takeaway for me. I think at my old previous organization, definitely used that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. We started like assessing our time and how much time we were spending with folks who weren't achieving, which
Yes.
is part of it's necessary, right? Like you have to do that as kind of the tactical work of, people. But we decided up front we needed to over-index on our high achievers. We can't neglect our
Yeah.
best people in order to attend to our lowest performers. We'd rather suffer like we did in Q1 2023 for just a minute so
Yeah.
that we could have the better result later.
I think we have time for one more question. So Sarah, hi, Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. And I love the idea of flipping the script in a lot of ways, like going from a PIP to a VIP. I mean, and just kind of like a more positive tone to that. And
Mhm.
curious like how that switch like did incentivize people to like rethink their approach to work. Because in a PIP, it's like I'm being punished.
That's right.
There's nothing I can do.
That's right. It's happening
But
to me.
voluntarily, yeah,
Yep.
like saying, okay, I am the owner of my destiny.
Agency.
And you're giving
That's
me that
agency. That's right.
agency. Yeah.
That's right.
I'm just curious, like how quickly did you see traction, that change
Massive.
in that?
So two of our VPs right now went through a VIP to become VPs. So, and the way we frame it is it's internal facilitated apprenticeship. So you find a subject matter expert that has a skill set that you don't have. The prerequisite to request a VIP is you're killing it in your job, KEI. And based off of that, you can say, I want to learn this from that person. You get buy-in from your manager. Then you get to pitch that person. If that person says yes, I jump on a bi-weekly call with that person and this person, and it's a violin lesson. Let me explain what I mean very quickly. It just means that the subject matter expert, their job is to be the violin teacher who says, between now and the next time we're together, I want you to voluntarily be miserable and do your scales. Practice, practice, practice these particular skill sets. And your job as the student is to say, yes, ma'am, can I have another? I actually want to get up early, stay up late. I want to learn this skill so much faster than I ever would otherwise because I'm going to do the homework. Because the growth doesn't happen in those biweekly meetings. The growth happens in the individualized work that you're doing between those meetings, self-determination. So that's how we measured it. And we kept raising the bar, and we had directors going to Harvard Business School classes, and it was just unbelievable the level of buy-in. And they created so much disproportionate value. They all got raises, they all got new jobs, and we didn't lose them.
Wow.
And I just like, how could we do this every day, all day?
Beautiful.
Have any of you guys ever seen the show Billions? So that some of you are nodding. I'm Wendy, minus the stilettos. And for those of you who don't know, don't even Google it. But just for context, that's my job, is to kind of figure that framing out. And for those of you who don't get that, forgive the inside joke at the end. That's lame.
But Dane, thank you so much for spending the time with us. This was incredible. We also do capture like the transcripts, and then we generate like AI summaries to share with our members. So I know a lot of people who couldn't be here today would benefit greatly. Dane is going to be at Sidebar Summit So we will see you there, and hopefully many of you will be as well. And look forward to having you teach a roundtable there.
Yeah, I think we're going to do something similar to this, but have a chance to go a little bit more in depth. So
Yeah.
if this is a conversation you want to get deeper in, I would love to spend more time in person.
Yeah, we'll send out the sign up links in a week or two for all the different sessions that you could sign up for. So
Great. Thank
Thank
you,
you so
everyone.
much,
Real
Dane.
privilege.
Thank
Appreciate
you. Thank you.
Thank
thank
you.
you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.